Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of what is the Eat, Sleep, Arsenal Repeat podcast. It's good to be back for a brand new season. Not with brand new signings, just same old, we've got here. No injuries to account for, other than, of course, you'll notice that Owen isn't here, sadly. He is working this evening, but will endeavour to be joining us throughout the course of the season when and if he is available, as goes for, of course, all of our guests. But hopefully we'll be back to full strength as soon as possible, which can't be said the same for Arsenal, but we got to talk about that, and we will do very shortly. I'm joined tonight by Sophie from the Hybrid Squad. How are you doing, Soph?
Epic. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Not too shy. I was a day off today, so
oh, look at you
out
boasting!
On the golf course,
wow,
getting the steps in, all of that stuff. I'll talk
What'd you
a little
shoot?
bit
What'd you
more.
shoot? What'd you shoot?
I'm not saying.
It
wasn't a good round. It really wasn't. It was well over 100, which is not great for me. It was a bad one. But it's only the second time I played this course that we were playing at, so I'm still learning it. And I'm trying a different swing start. I'm trying to learn how to kind of not slice my ball so badly. Like, I usually really compensate for the slice, and now I'm trying to learn to be more straight, and it's difficult to learn the stance. So yeah, it feels like it shouldn't be the way you hold it when you do it, I'm told, but I will get there gradually, slowly.
Listen, Tom, my golf game went to crap when I tried to learn how to shoot a fade, or a draw, and then I gave up and just hit it. I'm not equipped to do any of that stuff. So I found my game improved when I didn't focus on all of the buzz shots to hit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you just hitting it is a win. It's a big win. So yeah, absolutely. Also joined by the Doc. How you doing, Doc Raj? You good? You well?
Yeah, doing well. Just in between patients here, so.
I love how Doc always sounds so excited about everything. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's great to see you guys.
You sound so happy for that.
You gotta save it. You gotta save it for the matches.
Notice how the two Californians are one's wearing a beanie in the heat, and the other one's got, as usual, the hat back to front, right there, like style. What have you got?
A Cincinnati Gooners cap nearby.
Yeah, there you go. We like Cincy. Yeah, that's nice. Very nice.
It's a massive hat, though, I tell you. Matt got me this. It's massive.
It's massive.
There you go. Yeah, in regards to, we're going to kind of split this show up. We're going to talk about a little bit, obviously, about Jurrien Timber and the injury that he has suffered. We're going to talk a bit about the injury status of players like Zinchenko as well, of course. But I want to kick things off with the game, actually, because there was a game played today. None of us have seen it because it was behind closed doors. So we've not been able to see the game. However, we have come into the information about kind of what happened, who featured, who scored the goals. And behind closed doors game against Luton is what it was. So 3-0 victory. David Raya, to my understanding, played 60 minutes. I was reliably informed. Bukayo Saka getting a goal, Trossard scoring twice. Good run out. Strong sides, I'm told, played by both teams. It wasn't like the kids. It was full strength Arsenal, relatively full strength Luton. I don't think Declan Rice started. I'm pretty certain he didn't start. Jorginho, I think, played. I haven't got that confirmed, but it's kind of a whisper I've heard. But other than that, the usuals. Reece Nelson was back. Zinchenko was back.
Good news.
That's good news. They both played. So based upon that knowledge of a game you've not seen, give us a full breakdown.
Can I ask a reverse question? Is it unusual that we would have a behind closed doors friendly at this juncture of the start of the season?
Well, I was actually going to ask this question because Arteta in his press conference earlier today, and we'll talk about this, I think, with Timber. I guess we're going to address it now as well, is that he said that a lot of we're seeing Eder Militao, we've seen Buendia, we've seen Raj, help me, who else has been ACL injured this season?
Courtois, yeah.
Mings most likely hasn't been.
Yeah, Mings as well. And they put this down to a lot, if I'm not wrong, frequency of games. And Arteta said frequency of games is a problem. And now we're playing behind closed doors friendlies on top of the season. Is there a contradiction there? I think there might be.
I mean, I'm going to let the Doc take this one away just because I was surprised that it was happening. Number two, of course, we've had the conversation about the ACLs in the women's game, and that's a whole other conversation in terms of science and the way they train and how the frequency of playing. And I'll switch it to the doc here because okay, so I was in the middle of the summer. I was so excited for the Women's World Cup, and I remember when the World Cup came around, there was no other football, nothing. It was just the World Cup. You could
Mm.
really put your focus and energy on that. We had Leagues Cup going on here and still have with Messi. You've got the summer tours going on
The
here
Messi
with the
Cup. All I hear is Messi.
yeah, call
Just
it the Messi Cup.
constantly Messi.
Then you have the Premier League, NBC kind of mid-tier teams, the Villas of the world. I say Chelsea was involved in that, but then you've got that tournament going on. There's a lot of football, Doc. There's no time off for these guys.
Yeah, no, and that's the problem, right? It's trying to become year-round football. And then the other variable, Mikel touched on it, was, the Winter World Cup, right? So you might not have seen the direct after effects of that last season, but you see it over time, right? It's cumulative fatigue. That's why when people were talking to me, well, I mentioned that people were like, oh, it was the first game of the season for Timber, but it's not like that you just everything just resets, right? Like stuff is cumulative over the years. So now you have games coming in hard and thick with less and less rest time. So, these things can happen. And then, with Timber, he's also adapting to a new league. The intensity of the Premier League is higher than other leagues. It just is. It's more bursts. There's stronger competition top to bottom, right? So you have all these variables in there as well.
So can I, Tom, do you mind if I just jump in real quick with a follow-up to this? Because is it similarly to, I went on my Italian vacation. I come back, I weigh myself and I'm like, oh, you think, oh, I've only put on a couple pounds, but it's cumulative, right? The pounds don't show the minute I get back from Italy. So is there a chance that maybe playing on the artificial surfaces during the tour and things like that, or are we talking it goes a little bit before that in terms of the wear and tear and stuff?
I mean, the surfaces aren't great. I was at SoFi, it wasn't great. But that's maybe to me that's a very small piece of the puzzle. The biggest piece of the puzzle, the priority should be player workload and player games. That's by far the biggest, especially in the research. And so that's kind of what has become more and more rampant. It's just there's so many games. If you just go back and look at like what Saka's playing or what a lot of guys are playing internationally, there's no recovery time, right? So even the summers now are so truncated due to international play or whatever it is. So
glad you asked that question, so because and it leads into a curiosity about it, because for me the whole thing about the surfaces that the players are playing on it, and as you said, it wasn't great in SoFi, Raj, and I think the MetLife pitch was also pretty poor as well. But obviously this injury happened on the Emirates field. I might be, I'm not an expert, so again, tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the risk happens whilst playing on that pitch at that time. Once you're back at the Emirates and you're playing on that pitch, playing on those pitches like a month ago, is that really going to have an impact on you then having an injury on a pristine surface like the Emirates? Does that have any bearing at all in your mind, Raj?
yeah, I mean I always hear this about turf. There has been no link found between playing on turf and ACL. The only link that's been found is playing on dry surfaces, because that doesn't allow if you watch, for example, with most ACL injuries, the foot gets caught and the knee goes inwards. So the drier the pitch you play on, the harder it is for you to, there's more friction.
So I did mine
right?
on a hard surface. I did it on indoor, flat surface, rubber Astros, twisted my knee. That's how I did mine. It wasn't on turf. It was on a hard rubber surface.
And sometimes that, I played on rubbery tile, and it's hard to get your foot up, right? Especially depending on what type of shoe wear you have on. And so that can vary. So the drier, the more friction-based surface, the harder it is for your foot to escape. They actually found research showing that on when you're playing on a rainy pitch, your foot will actually slip, which then allows that knee to just come out. It doesn't get caught and twisted. So it's kind of maybe counterintuitive, from a layperson, but If you look at the mechanics of it, it makes sense.
Doc, can I ask you this? What of the narratives, and we've seen it before with Arsenal players, we've seen it with players from other clubs, but he hasn't been injured before. I think Thomas Partey was an example that Atletico Madrid hadn't really been injured, has come, muscle injuries, whatever it is. What's your take on Timber Cumming, who relatively was an injury-free player? Is it fair to say that maybe intensity, style of training can add to this? Is that something that we need to be taking into consideration?
Yeah, sure, it's hard to really quantify, right? But anytime you increase intensity or you have more fatigue or workload, you're at risk for injury. We also know in general, it doesn't matter what league you're in, every time you transition intensity, meaning let's say from camp to preseason games to regular season matches, there's a jump in risk because your body now has to adapt to that increase, right? So this is the first game of this is first game of the season. It's the highest intensity game he's played, right? That comes with some risk. It naturally comes with a bump in risk. It might be relatively insignificant, but that bump in risk can lead to more injuries. The data shows we see more muscular injuries early on in the season for that same reason. Bodies have to adapt to the game intensity. No amount of training is going to prepare you for that.
Is it also the role of the medic who is seeing to Timber on the pitch? And I'm asking this, I know a lot of you are very well versed and educated in terms of how the process works, but there's been a lot of comments, you guys, about how the medical staff maybe were...
Let's be honest, they've been getting pelters. So
they have, and I find that really kind of so unfair. Where does the decision making stand there, Raj? On the pitch, ultimately the manager has the last say, but how you can't really assess a player and the severity of the injury in that finite time. Can you talk us through that a little bit, because they have received a lot of criticism?
Yeah, it's outcome-based analysis, right, with the criticism. So, you have a process in place, especially with an ACL injury. There's really reliable hands-on testing, really, really reliable, arguably the most reliable test for hands-on testing to find a full ACL rupture. It didn't come back positive in this case. Part of it is with players who are really muscular, really strong, like Timber, it can create false negatives. And so the hands-on test was negative. He didn't feel any pain. He came back on and played out that half. Went back, likely had more hands-on testing, likely had movement testing, likely went through a warm-up and passed everything. And it's not just one person making that decision, it's the full team. And so, and then in the end, the medical team, like Mikel said, they're the ones who clear him. And Timber, I think there's reports today, even 2 days after the injury, he didn't have any pain. And so it's just one of those, outlier. The reality is, it doesn't matter how good your process is, you're going to have some outliers in it. So that's just what it comes down to. I'll give you an example. Man City with De Bruyne, they're considered one of the best, if not the best medical team in the world. You can tell from there how much the time loss of players is like top three every season since Pep took over. De Bruyne came back, played 20 minutes, re-injured his hamstring, full hamstring rupture. Should they all be thrown out now? Of course not, right? Process is process, but it's not perfect.
For me, it's like I saw comments with words like unforgivable and amateur, and it's like people think they know more than medical professionals doing these tests. ACLs, these types of ligament injuries, they're so spontaneous and unfortunate in those moments because of the twist. Yes, we can talk about the likelihood being increased because of the number of games due to fatigue and things like and the influence of that. But at the end of the day, these are moments. They're triggered in these moments by things happening. And every test on Timber would have been done. Every relevant check would have been done. Every relevant conversation with the player in terms of how he is feeling would have been done. There is no finger to point at the Arsenal medical staff in any way, shape, or form.
And also, Tom, imagine if the narrative before the City game was Kevin De Bruyne said he was surprised to be playing, right? people going at Arsenal for certain things, but also you've got the premier club, as the doc said, in the world with, now with what De Bruyne is facing. He's saying he's surprised he was playing. His manager's playing him. This is sports. There's part of it that is just like the cycle of sports. Players are going to get injured. There's going to be back and forth in terms of, what a medical expert may think versus the player. The player is always going to want to play. The player is always going to want to be out there. And so I just feel like we get a little bit killed extra for certain things where just sometimes, unfortunate things happen in sports and players get injured. And unfortunately, this is the case for Timber. It's so unlucky in so many ways. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think that the only thing I've ever critically said is that, and it's completely, and as I've always said with the benefit of hindsight, is that if the players come off after after he's been checked over, you're 2-0 up at home against Forest, you've got Tomiyasu and Kivior on the bench. The benefit of hindsight is really easy for me to say this, but we've got that depth, we've invested in that depth. We could have made the sub. We maybe didn't have to take the risk. And as I say, there's no chance that if we had made that or not, the injury would not have happened. Because as I said, it's one of those moments. I don't think that and maybe Raj can tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel as though the impact that happened at the tackle, it's still a 50-50 if it then goes to an ACL in the second half. Tell me if I'm wrong about that.
I don't know if it's 50-50. Like I said, that's what you have to base it off on all your checks, right? If you go through all those tests and everyone agrees to it, that's what you're basing it on. If you're just basing it on subjectivity, then it's hard. Then you kind of into a really slippery slope, right? And I also say that 2-0 for Arsenal these days might be a little more precarious than for other clubs. We just haven't. We don't really do a great job of controlling games, and so maybe that was part of it. I think we saw that second half, right? One poor counter, kind of give up these poor goals, and so I think Mikel might have been a little concerned about that. But really, he's just going off what the medical team tells him in the end, and everything's coming off as a green light, right? And you trust your process. You have to go with the process, especially in the moment, right? So that's why you have those processes in place.
Can I also just say, this is a player that's played how many 65 minutes for us in the Premier League. I get that he's impressive. We had him as the signing of the season on our show. We've all talked about him. Tom and I did a whole piece on him on our show about that. He is not only the signing of the summer for Arsenal, but he will be the signing of the summer when it gets to the end of the season and everyone's giving out those accolades. But I know folks think the sky's falling, but yet he's not been, how can I say this? He's not proven in the Premier League yet, right? So we've lost an asset that's going to help us be superior in how we play. But also we've lost an asset that hasn't really contributed yet at all. And there's a I don't know if I'm articulating that the right way, but how do you know what you're missing when you don't know what you've got, really?
Yeah, I know I understand what you're saying. I think the loss comes from if there is a further injury to a Saliba, to a Tomiyasu again. That's when we'll feel the loss of of Timber. We were top of the table, favourites for the league prior to Saliba's injury, prior to Timber's arrival. And it was that Saliba injury combined with Tomiyasu's absence as well that meant we had to move with Holding for games and Kivior at right centre-back for games. And that big change-up, and also a dip in form for Thomas Partey and some absences from him as well. Zinchenko's availability. Martinelli was out for the last couple of games. Jesus being out for 3 months. All of these combined factors is ultimately why we didn't win the title. I genuinely believe had we have had a full strength squad for much of what City did, City had most of their top important players for the majority of that season. And had we have been that fortunate, I genuinely think we would have won the league last year, but we didn't. And the reason we signed Timber was as a strategy to try and tackle that problem. And that is why for me, and don't worry for those listening, we will come back for the Luton game. We've kind of just gone off into the Timber stuff straight away, which is fine. We'll come back to the Luton thing because it is important to talk about. But for me, we have to now sign someone. We cannot because Timbers for me, you have to play it in the way that you think he's going to be out all year. Just play it in that. I think I'd rather have him out for the full season, let him fully recover, come back for 24-25. And so that means for me, we have to go out and still sign somebody. But tell me where your head's at with it.
I mean, I believe that because we've been so aggressive in the transfer market and we've made these major investments, it would be remiss of us to not go back in and continue the mantra of win now, with the squad that we have. You don't go out and make those types of investments if you don't believe that you can attack the Premier League. As someone says, attack, attack the Premier League this season. And yeah, I do. I think we do need to do that because number one, Tomiyasu's injury prone. Zinchenko's injury prone. We don't really know what Kivior is like long term in the Premier League. Kieran Tierney seems to be limited in terms of Mikel Arteta's assessment of what that position is now. And I think you have to reinvest. And it's not a lost investment if you get the right player. I don't know who that player is, Tom. I know you've mentioned a couple on your morning show, but I do believe that we need to go in, in order to kind of keep that vibe and that strength in squad going.
Yeah, I think that if this had happened September 2nd, disaster. It's not as much of a disaster because the window's open, but it's only in that sense if we don't then go and get someone. Raj, like when you look at this, have you been scouring transfer marks and YouTube for potential options you'd like to see, and do you have faith that the club will go and bring someone in?
I think it really depends on outgoings at this point. I think there was like a Arsenal had a thing about the Ray ideal. Why it was because the team right now doesn't have much cash. So I think it depends on. It looks like Tavares on the way out. That looks like it's going to happen based on what Nottingham wants. Balogun, then Monaco's just playing games right now, and so I think he'll go as well. So depending on how quickly that happens, I think that will then set the stage for a replacement. I know we've been linked to Fresneda, but is he ready to contribute right at this high of a level? There's also adaptation process. So, and there's a couple other names. So it's just, we'll see. We'll really see. And with Mikel, it's one of those things. He's become more and more focused on players who can raise the level, right, and not just kind of how it was before and come in and fill in. So it's going to be an interesting equation because you do get Timber back next season, right? So do you bring a player in as a right back who then is like fifth down the order next season? But that's an interesting balance to me as well.
Yeah, for me, this window was a forward signing away from a perfect window, and the players outgoing as well as wise. If we'd have brought in a player to compete with Saka, and we've moved on Pepe, Cedric, Lokonga, Tavares, potentially Tierney, Balogun as well, I would have been like, 10 out of 10 window. But with this Timber thing, it kind of in a way takes away. It shouldn't, and it's not for me a sense of like Edu doesn't still get the credit for that deal. They do, because it was a brilliant bit of business that we will have, from next season going forwards. I kind of hope that they start looking at a negotiation of a 1-year extension of his contract, because we basically lost him for a year. I'll be surprised, but who knows? The Raya deal in itself is worth something worthy of a prize, in my opinion, because it's just such an incredibly smart bit of financial business for Arsenal. But we have to make sure to finish this window strongly. For me,
I don't think it should take away from what we've done in the window at all. It's just an unfortunate. And also, if you're committed to the win now mentality, you go back into the market. There's time, like you said, it's not a disaster. If it happened on September 2nd, it would be terrible. And it's what he was able to bring to the team. So he's not the jack of all trades and master of none. He's a versatile player that is effective in multiple areas. And especially in a time where Zinchenko is struggling with his fitness, the way, I know a few people came out and said, don't worry, Soph, we've got Tomiyasu. Come on, man. We know Tomiyasu doesn't bring the ball out the back the same way Zinchenko and Timber can. It's limited. And those are the areas. Yeah, sure. Can he defend and be a great wall of Tomiyasu? Yeah, of course. But it's the other X factors that these players offer that's what Mikel is going to miss. And Timber was bringing a very special X factor to this team this season. And now he's got a plan for not having that. So what can you do in the interim to fill that gap? Because we know that the players that we have, other than Zinchenko, can't fill that gap.
Yeah, for me, it's a case of if the option is Arsenal can only have the financial freedom to either bring in a defender or a forward now, for me, it has to be the defender, because at the end of the day, it was the defensive lack of depth that cost us last season. You know, the forward line got the most Premier League goals we've ever scored. So with 88, we've added Kai Havertz as another attacking option as well. You know, Nelson is a year older. And Ketty is looking like he's starting the season well as well. You know, we have a better attacking squad than we had at the end of last season, but we have the same group of defenders that we had last season. And that's ultimately what cost us. So having that group in itself. So we need to improve that. And for me, that has to come from a signing. So, and Arteta, to be fair to him, seems, you know, proactive in the response to a question on that in the press conference this morning, saying that, you know, that we are active and we'll look to try and, you know, do whatever we can do. But the problem is you're not going to find another Timber. There isn't another Timber on the market right now. He is a very unique player and we did very well to get him. But there are players that are and can offer us strength in depth at right back and right centre back. And I think even though Timber was playing left back, I think that is still the area that we need to look to invest in, because Saliba being injured is the biggest detriment to this team, and having the ability to bring someone in at right back, if not Tomiyasu, someone else that allows White to then move into Saliba's position, is for me the best way forward. So
and just so everyone knows, I don't know if they've listened to the conversation we had on our show, but the club was so hot, and I don't say were because he's young, he's going to recover. But of all the signings, of course, everyone's excited about Declan Rice, but the club were really excited about this signing. And they felt like he was the X factor signing. And as much as the others were getting the headlines, Havertz for the wrong reasons, Declan for the right reasons, Timber was the one that everyone was like, you guys don't whiff on this guy. So it's really a kick for not only Arteta and the team, but the club as a whole, in terms of how I want everyone to know how much this signing lifted even the staff at the club. That's how important they felt this signing was.
Absolutely. Let's bring it back to the conversation about the behind closed doors friendly win over Luton Town, because it does actually nicely tie in a few threads. So just to confirm, this is the message that I got. So behind closed door friendly against Luton Town at London Colney. It was split into 3 30-minute thirds. It wasn't 2 halves of 45. Interestingly, I suppose that's to allow rest in between those periods, which is obviously a proactive thing to try and protect the players. 3-0 win, 2 goals from Leo, a goal from Bukayo Saka. Zinchenko and Reece Nelson both featured, and Raya played 60 minutes as well, and it was mainly first team players that play. Raj, Zinchenko returning, I think, is a really important thing. I know he's moving. Quick, hop, run. Zinchenko coming back was obviously, I think, a really big thing. We've been waiting so long to see Zinchenko back. He was unavailable for pre-season. He was unavailable at the end of last season. And we've missed him at the start of this season. Timber being out is obviously big. And he's been playing, you know, so big that we've been using our new signing that's never really played left back besides at youth level, playing him at left back in place of Zinchenko. How big for us now is seeing him back and ready? I feel like I extended that question long enough for you to get settled. So tell me.
I think you answered him. He's massive. I mean,
yeah, I did.
he's by far the most, in my opinion, the most impactful new signing last season, just in terms of how he controls the game, right? Allows for that inversion. He's still the number 1 left back, right? So him being back is it's huge. It's huge. I mean, from my understanding, he was still dealing with some calf issues, which can be really, really sensitive, which we've seen with multiple players, whether it's Tomiyasu or Zinchenko. So it's huge. I mean, he controls the game like no other player. I think that interview he had, I can't remember who it was with. Was it with Rio? Where he was like just telling him like the basics, and Rio had like no understanding of what he was talking about, which was the funniest part. But it's a whole different conversation. And like he sees the game in such a simple way right? And that's how Mikel sees it. I remember Mikel's first training with the team. They had video, and he was like, "You either pass the ball into open space, you either dribble the ball into open space, or you move into open space," right? And it's like these guys can break complexity down to simplicity. Those are the geniuses on the pitch, and Zinchenko for me falls into that same category.
I love the way I love the way that when he asked him about Saliba as well in that interview, the way he just kind of like broke it down and talked about it, and just makes you understand his reaction to that goal as well when he scored in his first season back. Doc, with regards to the injury that keeps you out is one thing, but then the secondary injuries that can occur in your recovery, what's the risk there for Zinchenko in terms of his recovery? Because we're talking about from last season now, and now we're close to September.
Well, the biggest thing is it's more just fitness level, like we talked about. When you're not match fit, you're at risk. And so coming back into matches, you have to develop match fitness by playing in matches. But then there's still that mismatch while you're developing that match fitness, right? It takes a while. Saliba said he's not 100% match fit yet even. And he's played the whole he's played games. It takes a while. I think people underestimate just what 100% is for elite footballers, right? Like it's not going out and running 2 miles. We're talking about this is the top 0.01% of fitness level, right? So it takes time to get back. But that's also where that risk for muscular injury comes in, because you can't replicate match intensity outside of matches. You just cannot. It doesn't matter even behind closed door friendly. You don't have the crowd behind you. You don't have that adrenaline. You're not going in for those 50-50s, right? When the crowd is roaring, whatever it is. So that changes the intensity level. You'd have to play consistently in those matches to build that fitness. But again, that adaptation process comes with certain risks.
Mm-hmm.
So Leo Trossard scored twice in this game against Luton, and yet he remains someone that seemingly can't find himself on the starting lineup.
I love this.
I would be starting him on Monday night. People will say this is obviously a game behind closed doors and that, but form is for me really, really important. Momentum is really, really key. I thought he looked good when he came on against Nottingham Forest in the first game. He was obviously massively influential in helping us lift the Community Shield with that strike at the end. Yes, very fortunate, you could argue, but the composure he showed before stepping inside to take that shot. In pre-season, he alongside Bukayo Saka was my standout of the summer of what he provided. A, should he for you start on Monday? And B, why isn't he starting?
So I love this player. We've waxed lyrical about him many, many times. I don't want him to start, and here's why. I think it's important to have lethal weapons on the bench and for the opposition to be afraid of those lethal weapons. I also think that the more you develop a caged animal, the more he becomes, fiery when he's going to be unleashed. Trossard knows this is one game in. We've 37 Premier League games to go. We've got the FA Cup, we've got the Carabao Cup, and we've got the Champions League. Trossard is going to have an impact on our season, and he is going to have a very important impact. And I really believe in this super sub concept. The Emile Smith Rowe 10 goals season, that came mostly from him off the bench. Everyone wanted him to start. I wanted Martinelli to start more. Came off the bench, had impact. Now, I think it's a little bit different because Trossard is a far more seasoned player. He's more mature age-wise. He's more he's older. He's more elevated in his experience. But he's going to be so important to this team. I don't mind him starting on the bench right now. I like this management because let's just say Havertz doesn't improve. Let's say there's things that become complicated. There's an injury. Trossard is going to step in and have a moment. But right now, I love the idea of having this force of nature on the bench that can come on and change the game. We always talk about having game changers on the bench, and he's definitely one of them.
He really, really is. And I see that argument. And I was talking to somebody about this the other day and saying, You know, if he doesn't start, you know he's coming on, like, because he's just so key for Arteta. And he's so key in what Arteta wants to do with that position. The other goal scorer, as we mentioned, was Saka, but the other key starter we've already mentioned so far was Zinchenko, is Reece Nelson. It was gutting to see him miss the US tour because, you know, just come back from injury, just signed that new contract. And then we find out he's injured again. And so coming back, what do you think about Reece Nelson and what he might be able to bring? I know he was on the bench for the game against Forest. He didn't come off the bench, but getting minutes here and starting, I think he did start the game. You know, really, really important. That's for you, Soph. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Raj is in vacuum mode.
So sorry, it's talking about which player were we talking
Reece
about just
Nelson.
then? Yeah, Reece Nelson. So okay, Reece
You
Nelson.
listen to my questions, I swear.
No, I wasn't. I was then reading the private chat message about the vacuum, and then I was like, "Am I stuck in a vacuum?" I didn't. And then you said, "So's good at that," and I'm like, "Am I good at vacuuming or just talking through the vacuuming session?" So yes, I'm good at that. I love Reece Nelson. Again, we need impact subs. I mean, he gave the perfect example of the type of player he could be. He almost did it twice last season. Once was enough, right? That's the position. I think there were two positions left where there wasn't enough competition. One was the goalkeeping situation. The other was Saka. Who's going to challenge Saka? Because I don't care how good he is and how much he's our star boy, and we have him on a pedestal, and I love that. But he needs to be challenged too. He needs to continually be motivated week in, week out. I like that we have these options. Here's the scoop. A little bit like Eddie. While Jesus is out, if Eddie comes in and does what he did last season for the time Jesus is going to be out, love that. If, God forbid, Saka's injured and Reece Nelson can come in for 2, 3, 4 games and perform well, love that. But long term, you need your premier players. And I think that we've enhanced our ability to cover over a period of time, but those players aren't good enough to fill in for a season, which is why we need to go back in and make sure that we've got cover for Timber, God forbid if Zinchenko's injured again. You know, Reece Nelson can be injury prone. Jesus is injury prone. You've got options for up front. So, yeah, I mean, he's good, but we know they're fillers. They're not starters long term. And I think that's the difference between us and Manchester City still just a little bit as well.
I agree with you. I think that when it comes down to the gap between Saka and who's behind him, and I look at Reece Nelson as a real option to come in for FA Cup, Carabao Cup, some Premier League rotation, Champions League group stage. I think Nelson's really improved in the last year, really stepped his game up and was really impactful in certain moments last season. The guy, a little bit like Nketiah, just needs that run of games and more consistency of minutes, and that's what's ultimately going to be really key. Raj, do you want to come in on Trossard just before we move on?
Yeah, vacuum means all fingers. Sorry. I think interestingly with Trossard, you know, Mikel has talked more about something called finishers, right? He's mentioned that word multiple times, having guys come in maybe the last third of the match. I think he currently views Trossard as one of those guys because he offers such a different type of game, especially compared to Martinelli, who's always making those, you know, those hard bursting runs. Trossard is much more all about, you know, finding space in those areas, being able to interchange. So that makes it really difficult for the back line to have to shift their mentality. You've been on your heels all game versus Martinelli. Here comes Trossard, who's now going to find those pockets. And so that balance between the two is what makes it, you know, so challenging to defend, to have to completely change your defensive mechanisms in game. It's such a valuable tool. At the same time, it's like, you know, what could he do over 90 minutes as well, right? So that's the other side of the coin as well. So it's an interesting balance. It's an interesting balance with Trossard.
Yeah, agreed. I think that if he ends up on the starting lineup on Monday, I'm going to be buzzing. But equally, you know, I know, as I said before, he's going to be coming off the bench at some point to cause some chaos if he doesn't start. So very exciting indeed. Looking forward to going to. I say I'm looking forward to go to Selhurst Park. Okay, I'll be very honest now.
I don't like going there.
I've never been to Selhurst Park and seen Arsenal win. right? So this Monday night, I didn't go last season, but I've been the time when we drew. Do you remember when Zaha died for that penalty and we drew 2-2? I think Xhaka
Yes.
scored that free kick from the right hand side. I was at the 3-0 defeat where everyone was chanting, "You're not fit to wear the shirt." I've been there at the worst of times. I need to see a win at Selhurst Park. Need to win. Need
Let's
to
see.
see one.
Magic Mike is not going to be there this season, so I think
True.
we're fine. You're not the Bok. He's the Bok, so I think we're good. I'm calling it right now. He's the Bok.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
hopefully you're right, and hopefully you're right, and that is certainly going to be the case. Just to kind of move on to the final part of today's show. Of course, this being the Eat, Sleep, Arsenal, Repeat podcast, it's not just about Arsenal, in particular Arsenal chat, but we also do a lot of health and fitness chat as well. And this season, obviously, as you guys know, the last four weeks, I think now, I've been on doing this training program with a personal trainer online, specialized diet and stuff, and started on around 101 kilos. I'm now 96.2 after just over 4 weeks. And like what the thing I've learned so much from this is that doesn't matter how much training you do in terms of like muscle work, cardio, whatever, you get your diet right and you're on a great pathway. Like I had overeating issues so badly. Like I'd snack here, just like feel like, oh, I'm bored, so I'm going to eat. Like just feel the gaps between meals with food because I'm bored and I want to grab something. Or if I'm watching telly, I'm like, well, I can't watch telly unless I've got a snack to watch telly with. Like getting rid of that and getting out of that mindset has like changed so much about my diet. I cannot emphasize it enough. Like diet is like 80% for me of the whole process. It's still important to do your exercise, and I've been getting my steps up as well, of course, because working from home and switching from teaching to this is, there's a lot more sitting around behind a desk and typing compared to that, and that's been key as well. And getting into golf has helped significantly with the amount of steps I'm doing. But what I want to do before we wrap up is I asked the guys completely. I planned them. This has been in the plans for weeks. I did not spring this on them in this private chat whatsoever just 5 minutes ago. But I wanted to say if everyone could come out, we'll get one from Owen for when he comes back as well, because Owen said to me the other day that he needs a health goal, so we'll get one from him. But if you can have one goal personally for you for this season, be that diet, training, mentality, and anything off the field, on the field, if you like. Soph, what would you go with?
I went through a phase where I stopped drinking for a bit, from Christmas until maybe until I got together with Magic Mike on one of these tours, probably. And I feel better when I'm not drinking as much. So game day drinking is for me going to be the big one, and especially because I watch a lot of the games here. So that can start early. You make an excuse. Hey, it's 4:30 a.m. Let's have a beer. Arsenal are playing. Who drinks a beer at 4:30 in the morning? I mean, it's not something about that just doesn't feel right. But at the same time, the culture makes it feel right. So for me, it's going to be a little bit of that. In terms of diet, I'm really proud of how I eat. Mediterranean diet, lots of grilled fish, grilled chicken. I'm on a bit of a vegetable kick right now. Yesterday, I just made this cauliflower, broccoli, asparagus, mushroom, San Marzano tomatoes, all in a big bowl, which has just been totally delicious. And then I'll just have a big bowl of that. So for me, and I don't even really like drinking, but I feel like when I'm with everyone or I'm watching a game, you kind of get swept up in it. And so for me, if I can cut out something that I actually don't really enjoy as well, that would be a win this season.
Yeah, I've found that's been a big challenge in this, is like especially with football. Like there was the early kickoff when we played against Forest, and obviously finishing work at around 4:30, 5 o'clock, and obviously that time everyone's still in the pub. Mike was there, and I'm there. I'm going there. I'm thinking that everyone's going to be drinking beer, which is like the worst thing that you can drink for health wise. So many carbs, like 200 calories per pint, and all this. And it's about sticking to kind of like vodka, soda, lime, or just soda and lime without even the vodka if I don't want to drink and stuff. But it is really hard. And I have slipped a couple of times. I have had a pint here and there with friends when I've been out, because like there's almost that peer pressure. And we've like my in-laws going up to watch the Charlton game, for instance, on the train. They got like a 8-pack of cans or whatever. I'm like, yeah, I'll have a can and stuff like that. And you can slip up. I think that's what's also key is like, you don't have to be perfect. You know, one of the things I've learned is like progression over perfection, and just making sure you're progressing is really, really important. Raj, what's your goal for the season, mate?
Well, firstly, yeah, this is why I watch games alone in a room by myself, and so no peer pressure. I don't drink during. I've never drank during games I care about. I already have enough stress, so it's like I'm just trying to watch the
Fair
game.
enough.
And so I try, although it happens sometimes, right? And so, and it's all environment dependent. Sometimes, when like I can't always be the environment I want, and in that case, someone's having a drink, you'll have a drink. It is what it is, right? So the key is just, I don't think it's just not beating yourself up about it. It happens, right? So it is what it is. My goal really is probably not overtraining, and so probably too active, whether it's with clients, whether it's with patients, tennis, basketball, lifting, running, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I always talk about, giving yourself recovery days. And that's my issue, is not giving myself proper recovery days. But I found more and more when I take a proper recovery day, I feel so much better the following week, and it actually helps, it helps your training because you're properly recovered. So I think it's, when you have this relationship with activity where, like, it's so intertwined in your life, sometimes you almost feel guilty for not being active, but you have to also understand you have to allow your body to recover, not just for injury, even if you're doing performance aspects, and you'll be better off for it. So for me, that's really trying to drill that into myself, just being able to recover and relax and shut off a little bit, which is difficult for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice to have a spectrum, I think, as well, like of goals. Like it's sometimes it's for someone it's to train more, someone it's to give yourself more rest, and and for Soph, just picking on something individual in your diet makes such a big difference as well, and mentally as well. I think, it's always been about willpower for me. And I thought that's why I think I needed to invest in a program. So now I know I've spent some money, and that's helped me as well, knowing that, it's not just like a fad thing where, I'm going to start a diet and all this and count calories and stuff. It's like, no, I've invested in this. I'm invested in this. And so therefore it's going to push me to commit to it more. And you've got someone holding you accountable in some ways as well, which isn't like a family member or a partner. It's someone that you don't know, which I think adds a little bit of extra pressure because, like, they don't know you. There's no sympathy in the sense of coming from a family or friend. I like that element of being held accountable by someone I've never spoken to or met before this period. So that's been great. So I look forward to updating you continually on mine and the guys' progress well, and hearing from Owen as well when he returns to the show very soon. It does mean that, of course, our Strava group is still going. I have been neglecting the Strava. I'll be very honest with you. I do need to get back into it to try and log at least my golf rounds and stuff like this. But it's great to see that so many of you have still been using it, which is absolutely fantastic. If you do want to join our Strava group, you just need to go to strava.com/clubs/ESARP. That's www.strava.com/clubs/ESARP. We've had some amazing stories last season. We started this whole thing pretty late on in the season, and we've had people in that Strava group meet up, become friends. So it's proven to be a really great place for people to kind of log that and share experiences. So please do join our Strava group. But thank you to everyone tuning in live. Thank you to everyone listening or watching on catch up. Make sure that you've dropped a like if you haven't done so already, and subscribe. Make sure that you followed these two brilliant people as well. Sophie, thank you for jumping on. Tell people where they can find you.
Thanks. Give us a shot at Highbury Squad. Have a listen to some of our shows. Got some good stuff coming up. And Tom, I just wanted to say well done for your event. Many people have reached out and written, and some of the folks listening to our show the other night was saying what a great event it was. So congratulations to you and everyone involved in that. Well done.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, it was a really, really great event. Just on that, hopefully tomorrow we will be uploading it. Uploading kind of an edited version. Obviously, those that are at the event know in the first half, Gabriel had an absolute nightmare with some of the microphones. So we've edited out all of kind of the chaos. So you'll get the edited version of the show. But it's it was great, and I look forward to doing more live stuff in the future. Watch this space. And Raj, brilliant. Oh, as always, my friend, thank you so much for the insight. Tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. As always nice to chat. It's been too long.
You always sound
Hopefully
so
this
thrilled to do it.
This is actually my thrilled voice. Imagine what it's like when I'm not thrilled.
He's so cool. He's so chill. It's so awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it's fine. You know,
And
it's, hey, how you
so,
doing, guys? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Save it for the game, like I said, save it for the matches. And so you find me at 3CB Performance on all social media. Hopefully, no more Arsenal injury updates soon, but who knows?
Absolutely. Just quickly, I saw someone tweet saying there's been an Orney bomb. I'm just checking what that is. Okay. It's about Nottingham Forest, and Yusuf Fofana is actually the midfielder that I really, really wanted to see Arsenal go for. 35 million euro plus add-ons bid has met Monaco's expectations. Now it's personal terms. So Forest, Yusuf Fofana.
Wow, that's impressive.
That means more for,
and
they have more for Ballo too.
Yeah, they've been linked with Bala, they've been linked with Tavares. So let's see if indeed Tavares ends up moving to Forest. Fingers crossed. I did say that I'd do a live show naked if we got 40 million for him. And then when it came out, I think John Cross in the mirror.
Well,
I think John Cross in the mirror tweeted something like, Arsenal wants 30 million. And I was like, no, surely not.
Wait, but Tom, not newscaster naked, right? Full on, not newscaster naked. You got to go like the whole.
I feel like it would be like Gary Lineker match of the day after Leicester won the league type thing. Sure. I think that's what it would have to be. So we might have to amend it to like Tom in his pants doing a show. Because, you know, it's just, I'm never going to get away with that. I'm a journalist. I can't be sitting around naked doing shows. Ridiculous. Anyway, it's not going to happen. We're not getting 40 million for Nuno Tavares. That's what we're even worrying about. But thank you, everyone in the chat box. Really appreciate your time. As always, as I say, do drop a like, subscribe, all that lovely stuff. And we're back next week. We're going to try to be doing these every Thursday at 9 o'clock. We're moving it from Wednesdays because, of course, we're in the Champions League, baby. So no Tuesday and Wednesday nights. Let's just praise we don't get knocked out in the group stage into Europa League on Thursday. That'd be really horrible. We're going to hope to do these a fairly regular 9 p.m. Thursdays. We'll update you as and when that we hope that we can do that. Have a fantastic evening, day, weekend, all that lovely stuff. Enjoy your Fridays. See you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. And as always, up the Arsenal.